Hey, anime fans! Welcome to another episode of Thomas's Prerogative, right here on the Shaft Podcast. Today, we will be continuing Final Fantasy Month with the game that made me a Final Fantasy fan, and in my opinion, is probably the best game in the series. That's right, I'm talking about the revolutionary, groundbreaking Final Fantasy VIII. Now, for those who don't know the story of Final Fantasy VIII, it follows a young seed mercenary by the name of Squall Leonhardt, as he and his comrades are thrust onto a mission filled with political intrigue, conspiracy, and mystery. And through it all, the fate of the world is thrust upon their shoulders as they have to save it. Now, as I said, the story in this game is groundbreaking and revolutionary. I say that because until this game and games like Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid came out, really a lot of game stories were still, oh, I'm sorry, your princess is in another castle. But again, like I said, it was groundbreaking because it had a very deep plot. I mean, at the center of this game is a great romantic story, which I'll get to in a second. But part of what made that story so great and deep was the great cast of characters that filled this game, from Sephiroth to Zell, Stephanie, Irene, sorcerers like Ida. Now, with that being said, like I said, the central part of the story is the romantic story. That's why the two main characters in this game, Squall and Renona, are so central to why this story works. If you don't have these two characters and the way they are, this story doesn't work. Because they are complete opposites of each other. Now, a lot of people say, well, I can't get into the game because Squall is emo. Wrong! I'm sorry, allow me to correct you on this mistake. Squall is not emo. Lelouch is emo. Light is emo. Other characters made constantly in anime today are emo. Squall is not emo, he is a lone wolf. You know what? What's the difference? Well, I'm sorry. Those other guys, they have a life. Oh God, I'm so bored with my life, I do nothing like yada yada. As opposed to Squall, whose mother died while giving birth to him, lost his whole family in the first 5 years of his life, was in an orphanage, nobody picked him, I'm sorry, if that type of stuff happened to me, I would be a lone wolf too. But it's because of that he is this sort of unbreakable sort of, I really don't want to be around everybody, I'm sort of distant from everybody. And then the complete opposite personality with the outspoken, very open, true to her heart, Renona, slowly throughout the game cracks that shell, and it's a very great romantic story between them. And you add the epic things that happen between the characters as the story goes along, it just makes it such a classic romantic story. Adding to that is the death of that, not only at the end, spoiler alert by the way, are they completing their love at the end of the game, but in a roundabout way they are completing the love of their parents that never happened. As you go through the game, you find out that Squall is the son of a man by the name of Lagana, who you occasionally play through flashbacks in the game, and Renona is the daughter of a woman by the name of Julia. Now, Lagana and Julia were in love, but unfortunately, Lagana was lost on a mission, and he disappeared. Now, he lived through it, but unfortunately, they were far apart, and they eventually did find other people who they Julia kind of fell in love with the general. It's never ever said where she was really in love with him, but Lagana fell in love with a woman by the name of Rain, and of course she gave birth to Squall. But the point of the matter is that Julia and Lagana were initially in love, and they really were in love. So in a roundabout way, their children are completing the love that they never could, and it brings such a depth to this story that to this day, I still really don't see this type of thing in video games. And it's not because it's boring, because unfortunately video games, let's face it, is kind of a sexist type of entertainment property. But we're going to leave that alone. Now, as far as graphics are concerned, this game still has excellent graphics. In fact, today, half the games that come out the graphics don't compare to this game. And I'm talking about even games that come out on 360, the Wii, or the PlayStation 3. That's how good the graphics are. Have they aged over the past 10 years compared to games like Halo and God of War and Metal Gear Solid and such? Yeah, but they're still beautiful graphics. The gameplay system is very deep, despite what people give it credit for. I found the junction system to be, when you knew how to use it and understood it, to be very deep and add a lot of strategy. At the same time, it was very easy for newcomers to come on because the battle style really focused on physical attacks. That made it easier, I think, for people to come onto this game. You had an element where they didn't have to learn how to use magic or really learn some. It's not that they didn't use them, but really a focus on junctioning magic and such to weapons to make them stronger. At the same time, it was very deep. Now, music, well, I'm just going to come out and say it. The music on this game is the best in the Final Fantasy series. And I think the soundtrack is probably the best video game soundtrack of all times. Do you disagree with me? Well, I can prove it to you in 3 words. Eyes on me. This song went on to win Song of the Year at the Japanese equivalent of the Grammys. And no other song to date has done that in video games. Not in Japan or in America. That's because the music on this soundtrack is just epic. And while Noboru Uematsu may have been famous in Japan because of past soundtracks, I think this was the place where Noboru Uematsu became known worldwide and renowned as probably one of the best composers in the world today. And he still is one of the best composers in the world today. So, overall, you can probably tell I love this game. And I think it's a must-hit and like a 5-star or 10-star. Wherever the rating system is, it's a perfect score. Now, does that mean I don't have issue with some of the things that happen in this game? Absolutely not. You know, again, this is a 10-year-old game. So, has it aged a little bit? Yeah, so that aging has happened. And also, I would have liked to see some voice work in this game. You know, but that doesn't stop me from thinking that this is a perfect score game. And I think it's a must-buy. It absolutely is. And I think if you really are a video game fan, or just someone who wants to know how a video game can transcend being a video game and become a story, this is the game. This game right here is the one you have to pick up. So, that's it for this week's Thomas's Prerogative. Oh, wait, before I forget, just to quickly follow up, I think that Square Enix should really re-release Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, and Final Fantasy IX on the PS3 with updated graphics and voice work. I do think that. So, as I said before I messed up, that's it for this week's Thomas's Prerogative here on the Shaft Podcast. Next week, well, we're going to be covering the sellout to World of Warcraft fans called Final Fantasy XII. Oh, I'm going to have to dig into my evil side for this one. So until next week, anime fans, peace.